Hey guys, Larry from Real Hi-Fi Help. I know this is probably like 2 years too late to make this announcement, but I only found out now that apparently Bob Carver has stopped their production, and it has a lot to do with the ASR review of that Crimson 275 that they totally tore apart in their detailed review. But I want to, out of respect to this guy here, Bob Carver, just quickly show you some things. Here's the official announcement that they're closing down. I think this happened around mid-year of 2024. Very sad. But also, like I mentioned in my blog, the last couple of products that they made were nothing close to the best of Bob Carver. So there are basically 4 products of Bob Carver that I have heard, and I think they're all good in their own way. Of course, not optimal compared to the very best in the world, but I think that it's some of the best value that has ever existed on the audio market, and it has sort of hit a sweet spot sound that most people would like. And this is going back to Audioholics review of it, and just look at these prices: $7,000 to $13,000. I know back then that was a bit more money, but still, for gear like this nowadays, if you could get something like this nowadays, I mean, it would be highway robbery. I'm not kidding when I'm saying this. In order to get this level of sound nowadays in the year of 2025, you probably have to pay something like $30,000 for a similar sound like this. That's how much prices have changed since around 2011, I would say. These are some of the most fantastically musical, magical sounding amps out there. And no, I'm not going to kid myself by saying that they were perfect, that they had the best amount of slam, grip, inner detail, highest resolution. No, they didn't come close to that. But they had this sort of in the middle sound where everybody could sort of agree with this just sounding fantastic. And I never got the fact that Macintosh and Ear and JLIS and all of those other tube manufacturers had so much success with their amps, but Bob Carver never really fully took off with these amps. These are some of the hidden gems on the market, and it just makes me super sad that they're not producing these anymore. Somebody should take these designs and revive them, do sort of get the rights from Bob Carver and remake these so they sound even better. I feel that this is really a hidden gem in the hi-fi world. It was a hidden gem. So basically, they looked like this. They only cost about $10,000 back then. The look was fantastic. Yeah, there were a lot of tubes. And I feel that it basically came down to the 180, then the 350, then the, which one was it now? This one I also heard. Yeah, that's the one, Black Beauty. I heard that one too. I think they were all good in their own way, but I felt that the 180s somehow were better. I don't know. Somehow they were a bit more pure in sound. And of course, he made this monstrosity, which is, yeah, it was very controversial. Very impressive sound. But yeah, you could hear there was a lot of processing going on in the signal, ridiculous price. Impressive sound, yeah, did a lot of interesting stuff, but just too much signal for the audio purists. But yeah, Still very impressive. I actually got to hear this once, but not in a good system, so I never really got the full connection to what it did. But I could hear it was interesting and kind of impressive in a way. But like Janos from Real World Audio said, too much signal, too much stuff going on. I think the best ever from Bob Carver was the 180 monoblock. So yeah, if you can find them on the market, go nuts. Look at the design. Perhaps try and contact Bob Carver to see if you could get the rights to revive this whole design. I feel that we need to somehow get this back on the market. I feel that 90% of what's on the market lags a tiny bit behind this standard here, and I'm talking about probably a couple of thousand up to around 30,000 US dollars. Once we get past 30,000, yeah, I feel that there are clearly a lot better options on the market, but for these prices here, no way. I mean, Galleon from Thomas and Stereo, I mean, goodbye. I mean, you can't get close to this sound. Even some of the Tube Guru gear out there, not really close to this, I would say. What this had was basically the ability to zoom in on the speakers that you were using, and a bit like the Technics SUR 1000 sort of impedance match, or I don't know what they did, but somehow figure out the correct load to the speaker that you were driving so that they could flex the muscles, create a lot of smooth, easy to listen to music, very good from top to bottom, just that thick, lush musical sound that most people want from tubes. And yeah, I lacked a tiny bit of that inner depth of the sound, the super high resolution and the super bottom end, but put this with like a really good preamp from like Audio Notes or some other preamp, and you had a fantastic combination. So yeah, just wanted to give my respects to Bob Carver. I feel it's so sad the way it ended with ASR trashing the 275. I mean, he was right. The 275 did sound a bit like shit compared to the previous products from Bob Carver. And when Amir from ASR got a hold of them, they basically had dipped onto a very low level compared to where it was previously. I guess it's because of the parts that they couldn't source, that they had to get into cheaper methods of producing Bob Carver. So yeah, they made a couple of amps after the 350 Crimson, where I basically feel that it went down from where the usual standard was. So if you can find these, if you can find the Crimson 350, those three amps are basically Bob Carver in a nutshell at his peak. So yeah, all respects to the guy. I really loved to listen to this gear when it was at my Audio Note friend's place, my other friend's place who used to own these. And I think there were at least two other places where I heard these with some completely different speakers. And yeah, it was consistently smooth, musical, nice to listen to, made most music just sound relevant, magical. This is why we get into the hobby of tube amps. And $10,000, I mean, ridiculously cheap nowadays. But back then, yeah, perhaps a bit expensive. So I feel that, yeah, sometimes in hi-fi, things go under the radar. Things don't quite get the recognition that it deserves. I feel that Macintosh, Accuphase, all of these bigger brands have gotten way too much attention, and that this guy here because of his weird, freaky circus-like nature, never really handled the marketing department as well as he could have. I think the problem was that he wasn't quite fake enough, but he was a bit too weird for people to follow his train of thought. And yeah, a bit sad. And some of the earlier products, I didn't really agree that they were that good in sound. I've heard most of his products now, but I have to say that the Bob Carver 180 motor blocks, that's the stuff. Plus this Bigger Brother, plus the Crimson 350. Try and get a hold of that if you can. Nowadays, it's very rare stuff. Yeah, that's me logging out. And yeah, just wanted to say, this is, by the way, why I have my channel, so we can not forget these brilliant people that once in a while make these gems, these hidden gems on the market. So all respects to Bob Carver. This is me from Real Hi-Fi Help logging out. Have a nice day.